All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. And tonight it'll be a story of fire and ice. We will have fun, as you'll see in the first story that we do.
I'm worried that there's gonna be too much fun.
Yeah, I'm worried we're gonna get tired of all the fun we're having and all the winning we're doing on tonight's show.
I think my core strength is gonna be tested today. There might be some, some.
Okay, let's see what happens. Let's see. Anna, I never doubt your core strength.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
The nickname for your core is #TooStrong.
I mean, my orthopedic doctor would say the opposite. Based on my back pain,
okay.
but I'll take that compliment. Thank you.
Okay, but later in the program, anger and fire. Okay, so Dana Milbank at the Washington Post has written a preposterous article comparing Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump, and we will let it rip. But most importantly, we will break down logically why he's completely wrong and why he represents the establishment. He really does. It was a clinic in what Washington media thinks. I told you they can't stand Bernie Sanders, and he says he's like Trump, but the reality is, as I've told you for a long time, and Donnie Deutsch slipped up on air just a couple of weeks ago and said it, they actually prefer Trump to Bernie Sanders. So we'll get to that story. On tonight's conversation, the third hour of the Young Turks, we're going to re-air the Tulsi Gabbard interview for you guys in case some of you missed it. I want to make sure that you all get to see it. And then on tomorrow's conversation, Glenn Greenwald. Now, Glenn and I agree on many things, including our disdain for Dana Milbank's article, which we both vociferously tweeted about today. But we did not agree on Russia. We are going to discuss some of that disagreement tomorrow on the program, so you don't want to miss that. That's going to be in the third hour. And of course, tyt.com/live. Okay, so now let's start with fun.
All right. Yesterday, we spoke about Jacob Wall and Surefire Intelligence and how it appears based on reporting and an investigation by TYT Investigates that the FBI is in fact looking into the false allegations that Jacob Wall had made about Robert Mueller allegedly carrying out sexual misconduct against women who he had allegedly paid $20,000 to or attempted to pay $20,000 to so those women could lie in sworn affidavits about how they had been sexually assaulted by Robert Mueller. Anyway, that's a downer part of the story because that was, of course, all debunked. But as we were covering that, Ken Klippenstein, who is our TYT Investigates reporter, reached out to me with something I hadn't seen before. And it is an image of someone who was apparently hired by Jacob Wall to be his security person. Let's just take a look at the tweet, okay?
This is during CPAC.
This is during CPAC, yeah. Jacob Wall is giving his CPAC presser while flanked by a tiny security guard with a single AirPod in his ear. I died.
I can't.
No, I died. It was so good. It's so, I want Jacob Wall stories to continue because it gives me a little bit of comic relief, especially with all the depressing stuff that we cover on a daily basis. And Jake, I'm not gonna let you jump in yet because we have video and we gotta go to the video first. Let's take a look.
And doesn't formalize the divorce to her brother until 2017.
And one of the most egregious parts about this, right, are these details that you're hearing about her saying that she was going to divorce him and that he moved back to the UK and that she remarried her cultural husband, whatever that means. This was all available to the media.
Okay. Now, all right, the fact that he's tiny is fascinating. Okay.
I don't even care about the fact that he's tiny.
No.
He's a fake security guy, and he's wearing these dark glasses. He's like, okay, yeah, all right. So rule number one of being a security guy, gotta have the dark glasses. Set, got it, good. I don't have a professional earpiece, so let me just put an Apple AirPod in my ear. That'll pass, right? No one's gonna notice. It's the best. Jacob Wall is the funniest person who's ever lived.
Okay, now, mind you, okay, I can't stop. Okay, we'll get back to Jacob in a second.
Rule number 3, must have serious expression at all times.
Okay, here's only thing I have to say, because apparently it's the only thing I'm allowed to say. AirPod. #AirPod.
Pod save save America.
Or maybe AirPods save wool. Okay. The dude put an AirPod in his ear, and Jacob and him probably looked at him and were like, yeah, looks good. Yep. And that's what Secret Service or security guards look like. They have AirPods that go nowhere.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jake. Look, he wasn't trying to make him seem like a security guard, okay? It was just a figure of speech. That's all that was.
That's like one of my favorite things ever. You said you have an honorary degree from Harvard. Well, that was a figure of speech.
That's it. That's all I had. I wanted to start off on a fun note.
I want to know what he was listening to. I'm holding out for a hero.
What is that song? What is that song?
Bonnie Tyler, what are you talking about? Holding out for a hero.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so look, I just want to remind you guys, yes, it's amusing what a clown this right-wing idiot is, but he has accused people of very serious crimes and gotten a lot of attention. So in the Mueller case, no one took him seriously, and he did a press conference with someone who he said was going to be a star witness, who of course did not show up, and the list goes on and on. But he did target Avenatti apparently in a way that got a ton of press attention, and arguably ruined Avenatti's reputation before it was legitimately ruined by his own actual investigations that they launched on Avenatti on legitimate stuff. And so it's funny, but at the same time, don't get us wrong. I mean, like, these guys are dangerous, and they appear to be breaking several laws. And I hope his next act comes from San Quentin.
Yeah, I mean, he's so dangerous. He's got to have security guards with him to, watch his. But no, look, you're absolutely right. But I mean, his mom's got to have a good talking with him, like his mom's got to sit him down and be like, listen, son, I'm not gonna let you stay in our basement anymore if you're gonna keep committing crimes from our home. Like, you can't do that.
Meanwhile, the little guy is behind wall the whole time. Like, while he's talking to his mom, and he's like, okay, hold on. We got a situation with mommy. That'll be the next TYT Investigate story, when we find out that not only is the FBI investigating Jacob Wall, but so is his mom.
All right, we got to move on to stuff that matters. Stuff that's happened recently in news. All right. Donald Trump has completely changed his tune on replacing the Affordable Care Act with Republican legislation. And this was, of course, after he had a talking to with or by Senator Mitch McConnell. And now he's saying that he never intended to vote on the Affordable Care Act's replacement before the 2020 election. And actually, he's not completely lying. So I'm gonna get to that in just a second.
Well, that's breaking news. We have Donald Trump in a situation where he's not completely lying.
It's an anomaly, but I'll point that out in just a second. So he just recently tweeted, I was never planning to vote prior to the 2020 election on the wonderful healthcare package that some very talented people are now developing for me and the Republican Party. Okay, so hold for a second. No one is writing legislation to replace the Affordable Care Act. Now, there are some Republican senators who are thinking about tinkering with the current system, maybe some proposals on how to lower drug prices. However, no one has a robust plan or is working on a robust plan to replace the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, I just want to say on that note, they keep saying, and Trump keeps saying, we're for covering people with pre-existing condition, and we're gonna lower drug. We got 4 talented senators working on lowering prescription drug prices. They never actually do any of those things. That's very, very important to note. All they do is talk about it, but in reality, every single Republican voted against the Affordable Care Act, which protected people with pre-existing conditions. They all voted against it. So when they tell you that they're working on that, it's a hilarious lie and also a dangerous lie. And,
right.
and you had all the chance in the world to lower drug prices. The guy who said we couldn't negotiate drug prices was George W. Bush, a Republican president. So they've not only not done what they say they're going to do, they've done the opposite for the last decade.
That's exactly right. And so, look, the one thing that I will point to is he mentions, I never intended to vote on healthcare legislation prior to the 2020 election. And he's actually right about that. So if you go back and look at his tweets from yesterday, he specifically said, Republicans are gonna have a great healthcare plan after the 2020 election. And so we had a little bit of a debate about this, whether or not it was a strategy to convince people, hey, if you vote for us and if you help us take back the House of Representatives and we have control of Congress, we're going to have a great replacement for the Affordable Care Act. I thought that it might be part of his strategy, and it is what he said yesterday. So he's not lying about that, but he is lying about something else. So he claims that he did not change his mind on the Affordable Care Act after speaking with Mitch McConnell. And I want to give you that statement right now. Take a look.
Did Mitch McConnell ask you to delay this?
No, I wanted to delay it myself. I want to put it after the election because we don't have the House. So even though the health care is good, really good, it's much better than when the plan comes out, which we'll be showing you at the appropriate time. It's much better than Obamacare. So when the plan comes out, you'll see it.
By the way, you've been president for well over 2 years now. And you already trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, the famous John McCain no vote. So you still don't have a plan.
No, they don't.
You say you won't have a plan for another 2 years, but that when you finally have it, it'll be secret. You won't. Nobody will be allowed to see it. But you'll run the election based on that, and it'll be magical. It'll lower all prices, cover everybody, and still look out for all of your insurance company and drug company donors. Sure.
And remember, there are two issues at hand. They're related, but there are two issues. So issue number one is what the Trump administration is attempting to do with repealing the Affordable Care Act through the courts. And then there is the legislative angle to this story, and that has to do with legislation that's supposed to replace the Affordable Care Act. And so my understanding is that yes, Trump and the Department of Justice under his administration is still trying to appeal to federal judges in order to completely repeal the Affordable Care Act, in order to find it unconstitutional, the entire law unconstitutional. So look, whether or not Republicans come up with a replacement now or after the election doesn't really matter. What really matters is whether or not the Affordable Care Act is going to get repealed through the courts. And for those who are progressives like us, who are like, I don't really like the Affordable Care Act, why are we fighting to keep it? I hear you, but right now, that's all we have. And that has important protections for people with pre-existing conditions, for young people who are still under their parents' insurance. We need to keep that in place until we have a real leader in office who will fight for Medicare for all.
Yeah, so Donald Trump lies even more. I mean, he constantly talks about it in his tweets about, oh, we're gonna protect people with pre-existing condition. But it's an absolute stone cold fact that in the court system, they are saying that they would take away protections for people with pre-existing conditions. I mean, he was in favor of that even before they put out the new memo saying that they want to repeal the Affordable Care Act entirely and call it totally unconstitutional. So there's 0% truth in that. He would take that away if he wins the case. People with pre-existing conditions, 52 million of you, can be denied tomorrow, and it is because of Donald Trump, no question about it. And every Republican is backing him, so any Republican telling you otherwise is wrong. And furthermore, when this is why I get frustrated with the press, and sometimes when Donald Trump says outlandish things that that wind causes cancer, they'll smirk and they'll say, by the way, small footnote, wind does not cause cancer, right?
No, but to be fair, there were pretty robust rebuttals against that.
I hear you,
so
but this is substance and this is policy and this is more important. So every time a Republican says that they're for protecting people with pre-existing conditions, you should ask them several questions. Number one, didn't you vote against that? Didn't you vote to get rid of Obamacare, 72 times, however many times you voted against it? So every time you voted to take away pre-existing conditions, didn't you, in the initial vote on the Affordable Care Act, vehemently fight Obama and the Democrats on that? And at the time, you didn't even bother pretending that you were in favor of caring about pre-existing conditions. You said, we should not cover them. We should not cover them. You all said that. And they don't have to pound the table as they do it, but every reporter should ask every Republican, otherwise you're being negligent. You're letting them lie to your audience and just transcribing their lies. They have always been opposed to it. They have never had a plan that would cover it. And that's because they care about their donors and not about the voters. And it's just a fact. Yeah. The court papers are a fact and the Republican votes are a fact. And they make it seem as if it's 50-50. Oh, we'll have to see what the Republican plan is. We know what the Republican plan is. Nothing.
So despite anyone's perception of how the media has handled the healthcare story, the fact of the matter is healthcare was a winning issue for Democrats during the midterms, which is the main reason why Republicans were blindsided by Trump completely shifting his focus from honestly a win over the Russia investigation to healthcare, which is a losing issue for Republicans. They were blindsided, and that was the reason why Mitch McConnell pulled him aside and said, yo, we are not gonna vote on any type of healthcare legislation in the Senate, so shut it. And after that, he did change his tune.
Yeah, so him now saying, oh no, it was my decision. Now look, Mitch McConnell not only came in and talked to you, but afterwards said, now the president no longer holds that position. And he's like, oh, New York Times misquote, got the story wrong. Maggie Haberman tweeted, all we did was quote Mitch McConnell. It's a direct quote. And so if anyone is lying at all, it's either Donald Trump or Mitch McConnell, and you guys should make up your minds about who's who, right? Mm-hmm. And then finally, I'm looking for an apology to President Obama for all the Republicans who, at the time, absolutely insisted that covering pre-existing conditions was no big deal and that we should not do that. Now, if you're pretending that you care about that issue, then you should at least come out and say, oh, we're sorry, it was our mistake in opposing President Obama. He was absolutely right that we should have been covering pre-existing conditions. Mm-hmm. We should have made insurance companies cover pre-existing conditions. So are you ready to apologize? Are you ready to concede that you were wrong? No, you want the best of all worlds. Oh man, I can't wait to repeal that goddamn thing. I love what's in it. I love it. I love covering pre-existing conditions. I've always been in favor of pre-existing. No, you haven't. You're a total liar. The only reason why the whole country doesn't know the Republican Party lies systematically on every issue, every time, is because the mainstream media covers their ass. And they call everything 50-50.
One other thing I want to add, just in response to what you said, is healthcare and the Affordable Care Act is a good case study for politics in America, because it started off with someone who identified himself as a strong leader who's gonna fight for progressive values, in the very least a public option when it comes to his healthcare legislation. But instead, it was one giant concession, let's keep it real, to the private industry, health insurance industry, and also to Republicans. This was a Heritage Foundation policy that was adopted by Mitt Romney in Massachusetts. And so I only bring that up because yes, I agree that Obama, I guess, deserves an apology because pre-existing conditions are important in terms of whether or not people get covered. They should get covered for it. But more importantly, and I know hindsight is 20/20 and maybe it doesn't even mean anything right now, I want the Democratic Party to learn something from the failures of the Obama administration on this issue. Because I know they won't, but I'm just gonna say it anyway. Because even though he gave that giant concession to Republicans, look what they did. You think that they were supportive of it? Of course they weren't. They tried to repeal it. No. Over and over again, they tried to repeal it, and still till this day they're trying to repeal it. So my point is, for the Democratic Party, look, I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing if you're trying to work with Republicans. If it were 1994, right? But it's not. We're in 2019. Republicans have shown us time and time again that they have no interest in working with us, and everything is politics. You look at the polling. You look at how the same poll respondents rated the Affordable Care Act as high, like highly rated, and then once you name it Obamacare, low, right? And it's because of the insane marketing strategy that the Republican Party successfully carried out.
Well, look, then I got to go back to the mainstream media. They are the Republican Party's best friend. They help them in every turn. Now, Saddam Hussein did not attack us on 9/11, but 70% of Americans thought he did. Why? Because the Republicans lied about it, the Democrats didn't say anything, and reporters are like, hey, we're stenographers. Well, Republicans say this, Democrats say this. Me actually find out the truth and tell you? No way. Republicans say they have a great healthcare plan. They don't even have one, but I'll call it 50-50. They all were against pre-existing conditions. Now they say they are. I'll call it 50-50, even though it's an obvious lie. It's an obvious lie. And then people can't tell what's what. Why? Because the media constantly does political correctness and lies on behalf of the Republican Party. So Dana Milbank did it today.
We'll get to it later.
No, I know, but he comes out and he's like, Bernie Sanders is like Trump because he won't concede to the Republicans like Biden and Beto will. They're so good at conceding to Republicans. Why? First of all, you're in the media. Why do you care what strategy they have? You care because you're like, now Democrats, remember, all the Washington media is gonna tell you, you must bow your head to the Republicans. And no matter how extreme they are, you must concede and go half the way, then half the way, then half the way until you're all the way next to Genghis Khan. So sorry, Dana Milbank, sorry, Washington media, we do not agree. I believe that the Democratic Party should be opposed to the Republican Party. And it's amazing that that simple concept is considered radical in Washington.
When we come back from the break, we will talk about Fruit of the Loons.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks, lots of comments, some controversy in some of them. Chris Red 18 writes in the member section, quite frankly, Tulsi's far to the right on a lot of issues and has had atrocious votes in the past. Her supporters are pretty much a combination of Clinton and Trump supporters in their vitriol, particularly when dealing with Anna because she has pointed out those votes. Okay, I'm not gonna get into that issue. Watch the interview for yourself. It's in the third hour of today's show. And then have at it, Hoss, in the comment section, okay? Cloyd says, hello TYT, you got yourself another fan today. My 11-year-old daughter and I watched a couple of episodes of Damage Report, and we had to talk about racism in the Republican Party and why both are bad. It was in regards to DeVos rolling back Obama initiatives to protect black children from being overpunished in public schools. So great, awesome, thank you. Gabby Marita says Jacob Wall has an honorary security guard. That's very funny. Turk Yoda says, I love the way the bodyguard moved into the camera shot, so he was right in the center. Talk about photobombs. Totally, 100%. Okay, and then finally, and no, I know it's too much. It's too much. Pezosaurus writes in, they don't have a healthcare plan because Obama implemented their plan. That is unfortunately literally correct. It was, as Anna pointed out in the last segment, a Heritage Foundation plan and Mitt Romney's plan that Obama implemented. Okay, let's go forward.
All right, if you are a student of journalism, political science, or communications, you can get a 1-year membership here at TYT, free for you, because our awesome audience members actually purchased membership for students. So if you want to check it out, it's very easy to do so. You just go to student@tyt.com. You email student@tyt.com, and there will be some sort of verification process to confirm that you're a student, and then you will get access to TYT membership. Again, free for you, so check it out. Moving on. During one of Donald Trump's recent appearances, he had something interesting to say about the Mueller investigation. Now, some might argue that comparing the alleged criminality of Trump to what Nixon did is like comparing apples to oranges, and apparently Trump has latched onto that narrative.
I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation, the beginnings of that investigation. You look at the origin of the investigation. The Mueller report, I wish, covered the oranges, how it started.
Okay, so now we're talking about oranges. And it gets funnier because you're about to see how they fix the record on this. Okay, but look, I think that his condition is deteriorating, just like George Conway said. I've maintained all along Kellyanne Conway is sending messages through her husband, George Conway, and he is saying that his mental state is getting worse. And look, you slip up once on oranges, instead of saying, see, I didn't say origins exactly right just then, but you correct yourself, you say origins, or you move on. But to say oranges 3 times.
Yeah, it happened 3 times. So the first time I listened to that clip, he said oranges the first time, and I thought to myself, maybe I heard that wrong. And sometimes when you're speaking quickly or you're speaking off the cuff, we've had it happen to us where we don't enunciate something correctly and it sounds like something else. And so I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it happened 3 times. And then our wonderful senior producer, Brett Ehrlich, pointed out, and maybe we're reading too much into this, but I thought it was an interesting point to make. After the first time he said oranges, there was a change in his facial expression that was notable. So let's take a quick look at that.
I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation, the beginnings of that investigation.
So I feel like he realized that didn't sound right, but he kept going and then he said oranges 2 more times. So look, I don't know what his mental health condition is. I don't know if he has a mental health condition. I hate speculating about that.
I don't.
I know.
Yeah, no, look, if you're saying it's not deteriorating, he was always in this kind of bad mental shape, fair enough. But this is weird look, he has other preposterous lies he told in the same 24 hours. We're used to his crazy lies, and if you think maybe he's just doubling down like he always does, no matter what mistake he makes, he's definitely gonna come in and say, no, I was right. Remember when he tweeted out Kofefe? And so a normal person would say, hey man, I slipped up, who cares? I deleted, well, let's move on, right? That was an obvious mistake. No, Trump came out and said, oh, I meant Kofefe. And it's actually, for the people who know, you know what it means. That doesn't mean anything. And so maybe he's like, oh yeah, I said oranges once. I'm gonna keep on saying it because the word isn't origins, it's oranges. There is actually now 25% chance that MAGA guys will start using oranges instead of origins.
I don't know. I mean, I would expect anything from them at this point. But let's move on to what the official White House transcript says, because there was some curiosity as to how the transcript would be written following Trump's statements. And according to the official White House transcript released almost 5 hours later, Trump didn't say oranges at all. He said oranges, spelled with an I, and he only did it twice. Now you guys watched the video, he actually did it 3 times, and I'm gonna give you the part of the transcript, the official transcript that's relevant here. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges, and then it has origins in brackets, the origins of the investigation, the beginnings of the investigation, of that investigation.
Okay, why did you do that? Write origins and move on with your life, pretending he didn't say oranges. Or maybe you write oranges, even though that's super embarrassing, the correct way. But the one thing you don't do is
make up a new word?
Make up a new word of oranges with an I that doesn't exist. Put it into the record 2 out of the 3 times. What's the point? No, they're all lunatics. I mean, but they're trying to keep up with the head lunatic. The fish rots from the head down. And so they're like, all right, what would crazy man do? He might have told him to do that because he's nuts.
So I'm gonna just talk about what I suspect might be going on. Look, he's on Twitter super late at night and super early in the morning. It appears that he's not sleeping much. And he's also up there in age, right? So if you're not getting sleep, you're not eating healthy, and you're not exercising, you're not doing the typical things that people do to keep themselves healthy, this is something to be concerned about. And yes, I mean, there have been flubs like this over and over and over again, and I think that it's become normalized to some extent, and now we just kind of think, oh yeah, it's Trump, it's typical Trump. But no, he's the leader of the country, right? Like he's the person who's making some serious decisions. He's signing executive orders left and right. He's, going from one policy to another, talking about shutting down borders without thinking about the ramifications of the economy or to the economy. He's, threatening to completely repeal the Affordable Care Act and the protections that it has for people with pre-existing conditions. I mean, the foreign policy issues, our involvement in Yemen, like all of these things he's obviously involved in because he's the president. And so I don't know what his mental health is, but what I do know is he's not sleeping, he's not eating right, and he's not making good decisions, and he's not making any sense.
No, look, I don't mind the bad decisions. You guys voted for him, okay? That's what you signed up for. You signed up for a guy who's doesn't like people from other countries or other races, etc. We can go on, and you love being deplorables, and I get that, and you're allowed that. He won the election, right? But he's mentally unbalanced.
So I actually do want to go to another video from the same appearance, and this is where he makes a statement about his family that was absolutely not true. Take a look.
I mean, Germany honestly is not paying their fair share. I have great respect for Angela, and I have great respect for the country. My father is German, right? Was German, and born in a very wonderful place in Germany. So I have a great feeling for Germany.
His dad was born in New York.
In the Bronx, right?
I forget which borough of New York. Why would you say your dad's born in Germany, in a beautiful place in Germany, a wonderful place in Germany, when he's born in New York? What's wrong with you? No, literally, what's wrong with you? And so conservatives look at this and go, oh yeah, man, you're bothered by Trump. He's living rent-free in your head. I got you, own the libs. Own the libs with what? Like weird lies that for no reason, that make no sense? Using the wrong words for simple words and talking about oranges. Like, are you guys proud? No, I'm telling you, man, the guy is obviously mentally unbalanced, and we're all having a conversation. I mean, this is a story right out of the books that our kids read. It's the emperor has no clothes. The whole country's pretending he's got clothes. He's obviously unbalanced, talking about oranges and how his dad was born in a wonderful place in Germany. And we're all, and conservatives like, oh, that's right, man, he owned you guys by being mentally unbalanced. Okay, you should look in the mirror, and maybe they voted for someone just as crazy as they are. But he has significant, obvious mental issues. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I also say, again, I'll go back to the press. They point out, of course, that there are no oranges in the Mueller report, and they point out that his father was born in New York. But they're not having a conversation about the elephant in the room. If he ever had a mind at all, he has clearly lost it.
So what is the solution?
The solution is obvious. The whole country should be having a conversation about the 25th Amendment right now. And it is not a thing to be used lightly. It's not to be used for politics. I can't stand any of his policies. It's not about that. He gets to decide what he wants to do with the border, with trade, even though it's monstrous and wrong-headed. That's not the point. The point is, does the president have control of his, I was about to say facilities. How's that for ironic? Faculties, okay. See, but I can tell the difference. Whereas he would say, no, it is facilities, but spelled with an E.
Well, that's because of his insanely thin skin and his inability to, he's got super low confidence when you think about it. He doesn't like to be wrong, and so when he is wrong, he'll go ahead and own it as if that was what he meant to do. And there's a lot more of that when we come back from the break. In the same short time period, he was at a Republican event, and during that event, he said all sorts of, crazy things. And you'll see when we return.